This is my dog, Yahtzee. He is a 3-year-old silver poodle. He's full of energy. He's a little bit dingy. He loves alliteration. And my wife says that we're exactly the same person. So that's why we get along so well. Now, there are some differences. Yahtzee's not in any clubs, and I've been a clubber my entire life. In grade school, I was in reading club. I was in art club. In junior high, I was in photography club. Later in high school, I helped start creative writing club. And then computer club. Oh, that's the stuff. I think I've been in computer club for a very, very long time. Too many years, more than 44 years. So I have a lot of experience seeing clubs do things. And when Richard, you talked about being caught in a cycle between fear of failing and fear of succeeding. Well, one way to get out of that cycle is to follow Taylor Swift's advice and shake it up. Okay? And the mathematicians have a fancy $5 word for shake it up. It's stochastic. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about one of my favorite examples, simulated annealing in order to avoid local minimums. So let's get to it. Let's see if I can push the right button. Doink. I think I did it wrong. Darn it. What's that old saying? You know, everything works until you get punched in the face. You know, by the way, Rebecca, you are one of my new heroes. I loved your talk. It reminded me of Malcolm Gladwell's David and Goliath book from 2023, where he talks about how unconventional means to win basketball games happen. So let's go to the next one. Or can I try it again? Oh, look at that. I learned how to use the remote. All right, so Yahtzee and I like alliteration, hence the pondering previously profitable phenomena. So, and the basic gist of these phenomena is don't get stuck in a local minimum. What the heck is a local minimum? There's a beautiful slide later, but I'll spoil the punchline. Imagine that you're in a valley and you get an order from on high to find the lowest place. Well, you're in a valley, so you look around and you're like, it's right there. It's at my feet. But if you were to climb some of those hills or over one of those mountains that creates the valley, you would see that 10 miles, 20 miles, 100 miles away, there is a much greater minimum point. So when you get stuck in that cycle, I would posit that you are caught in a local minimum and you need to be stochastic, shake it up. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're also going to talk about how Dungeons and Dragons went from dragging and dying to growing and thriving by shaking it up. The military has a name for what I term the scientific method of come up with a hypothesis, come up with an experiment, execute the experiment, learn from the experiment. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about two major types of organization, the spider and the starfish. And I'm going to advocate that we can grow by being more in the starfish mode. I'm not saying kill the spider. I'm just saying let's add some starfish to it. So I really like the idea that came out yesterday when Floyd was talking about how we're all a family and how we should build families. And if you haven't read Vonnegut's Cat's Cradle, it'll take you a day. And it talks about the notion of family, or as Vonnegut puts it, the karos. Let's have fun. Let's live our possibilities individually and collectively. Let's learn how to use remotes. So here's a fancy definition of stochastic. And basically it means let's experiment, all right? Simulated annealing. Annealing comes from metallurgy. When you heat up the metal, things vibrate, molecules vibrate, and next thing you know, they find all the minimums and they fill it in and it's shiny and smooth. Why do we care about this stuff? We care about this stuff because we want to be Toastmasters for life. We don't want to be Toastmasters until Toastmasters went away. And Toastmasters openly talks about their money problems. They did that a month ago on a Zoom call that's now archived on YouTube. One of the things that's true about these slides is whenever you see a blue link like Mike's blog or a blue link like broadcast or an image, you can click on it, and you can get these slides by visiting mattpayne.org/26, because it's the 26th of April. So there are money problems, and they're saying, look, we're going to have to reorganize. Yesterday, we talked about reorganizing a little bit. On Thursday, we talked about reorganizing a little bit. So what I'm saying is, don't wait. Let's get busy making things better. All right. So let's experiment. Let's talk about 3 previously profitable phenomena. Hopefully, some of you have not yet heard the story of Gillette and its razors. Back in the day, decades and decades and decades ago, Gillette was going bankrupt. They couldn't sell anything. You know, they said, Don, our razor is the best. You should buy it. And Don's like, are you crazy? I don't want to buy that razor. It costs a heck of a lot of money. They were stuck. They were stuck in a local minimum. So what they did is they experimented. They said, you know, if we give away the razor and then someone buys 100 razor blades, then we're going to be in the black. We're going to be in the profit. So, okay, we're going to do that. Floyd, thanks for shopping today. Here's a free razor. Take it home to your family. Your son and husband will love it. And they did, because it was a great razor. But it had a quirk. It only worked with Gillette razor blades. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Those of us like Mark and I, who've been in computers forever, remember when there was Token Ring and Ethernet and NetBEUI and all these different standards. And now there's just Ethernet. And the thing about the Ethernet that's really neat is it creates what Lawrence Lessig calls the comedy of the commons. The tragedy of the commons is I eat everything off the buffet and you go hungry. But there are other things where if we have a shared standard, we all thrive. A rising tide lifts all boats. And Ethernet is a simple example of the comedy of the commons. So is open source software an example of comedy of the commons. Now, Dungeons and Dragons is a really, really interesting tale. And you can click on Phil Edwards' YouTube and hear about it for about 38 minutes if you want to. It's a fascinating story. But the gist of it is the Dungeons and Dragons people, they were caught in a local minimum right about here. It was not looking good for them. There was not enough steaks in the freezer, not enough cheddar in the bowl. They needed money. You know any other organizations that are like that? So what they did is they said, look, everybody, we're gonna relax. And if you want to make a game that has the same basic mechanics as Dungeons and Dragons, we won't sue you. As long as you don't take our materials, erase our name, put your name on it, we won't sue you. As long as you give us a tip of the hat, a citation, a reference, we won't sue you. And you know what happened is the economy around Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop gaming just took off tremendously. And it was a comedy of the commons. And now today, they're completely thriving. And it's extremely exciting. Now, those of you that are familiar with this story will be tempted to tell the seedy after story where they tried to claw some things back, got smacked around, and changed their mind. That's a fascinating story, and it's unrelated to the point that I'm attempting to make. So, I talked about local minimums. I gave the example of you're in the valley and you're looking for the lowest point and you really need to look beyond the hills and mountains. Here is a lovely thing from math class. I hope it does not trigger anyone. I personally have wonderful memories of math class. I had this classmate. Oh, wow, she was great. Okay. So as we move forward with pondering these possibilities of how to escape the local minimum by shaking it up and being a little stochastic to find a way, we need to remember what the military does, which is over and over again, they OODA. They're in an OODA loop. They're observing what's happening. They're orienting, making a hypothesis. They're deciding which hypothesis to test and how to test it, and then they're acting. And there's been some of that recently. In 2023, I think, Rail Talkers, one of District's 24 fantastic clubs, did a one-day unconference called Breadwinners. What a delightful tip of the hat to Toastmasters. Toast, bread, masters, winners, breadwinners. And unlike this conference, where there was planning and rehearsing and submitting the slides in advance and all of those things that are very standard when you go to a lot of conferences, you would just show up. I asked my friend from Reveliers, who's never been to a contest, Kurt Ryder, one of the best speakers I've ever met, to come talk. And he did, and he just nailed it. It was so beautiful. So more unconferences is one of the proposals that I hope you ponder, because it's been previously successful. Bar camps are a thing that goes back maybe 20 years or more. Omaha has an amazing bar camp. Instead of a one-track conference like this one, it's a four-track conference. They have technology, entrepreneurial, creative and arts, and kitchen sink. It's incredible. I encourage you to go. The talks are 20 minutes long. It's super fun. And wouldn't it be great if people who went to bar camp learned that Toastmasters existed, learned that there's this amazing tool set where they can get better? Kind of like the open gaming license introduced more and more people to tabletop gaming. And then what did? They took their money and they ended up funding the people who wrote the original D&D. So if you Google coffee talks, there's tons and tons of variation. The basic idea is let's get together for coffee and talk with each other, maybe give each other some feedback. There's a thing in the agile world, which is big in computer programming right now, called lean coffee. I encourage you to click on the link. It has some very, very concrete rules around brainstorming and having discussions and all of that kind of thing. And lastly, almost lastly, I want to emphasize the idea of the starfish. There's two ideas with starfish. One that I've known for a long time, which is on the bottom. A child and an adult are walking along the beach. There's starfish everywhere because it's low tide. The child bends down and takes one of the starfish and puts it back in the ocean, and the adult scoffs. The adult is being a crab. Why do you do that? You can't save them all. Why bother? And the child, always the teacher, the child, says to us, well, I saved that one. So we might not be able to take these experiments and do them on an international level, but let's do them on a local level. Let's do them here in Norfolk. Let's have an unconference in Norfolk. I'll drive out. This will be fun. Let's have Toastmasters unconference in Omaha. Let's invade the Omaha Bar Camp in August when it happens again. Let's give some talks. Let's get out there. And lastly, there's this idea of the starfish and the spider, which I learned from Rachel Myers, a computer programmer who is awesome for many reasons, one of which is she has a bachelor's degree and master's degree in philosophy, not formally trained in computer programming. It's amazing how often that happens. And she points out that centralized organizations are the spider model, where the spider's at the center of the web controlling things. And starfish are another model. There was a starfish infestation once, and they went out to kill all the starfish. And they found out that starfish are regenerative. And when you cut one in two, you've got two starfish. So as you're doing these experiments, as you're doing anything, as you're doing the standard stuff that we all do, starfish yourself. Toastmasters is really, really good at that. Thank you for pulling me up and asking me to be an area director in 2024. I really appreciate it. I will say yes to that again one of these days. It's always nice to hear recommendations. I implore you to read this book from 2014 of Amy Poehler's. It's terrific. One of the things that it includes is the rules of improvisation. As we're experimenting, as we're being stochastic, remember it's improv, we're experimenting. So I want to pump you up to live your possibilities, to live our possibilities. I want you to think about spreading the joy of better listening, better thinking, and better speaking. I want you to demonstrate service and leadership in organizing events beyond clubs, meetings, and contests. I want you to give me a hard time if I haven't done it in the upcoming year. This is just a list of things. The other day, my wife had a PowerPoint party that her and her friends heard were a thing on TikTok. And I perked up and I was like, that sounds like Toastmasters. She's like, it's not that formal. So maybe, just maybe, not everybody likes all the formality. So starfish yourself, avoid those local minimums. And the other day I was talking to you just yesterday, Pam, and I said, you know, Jessica taught me that Toastmasters, we have to do certain things. We have to do A, B, C, and D. We have to have conferences. We have to have contests. We have to do quarterly reports. But you know, there's nothing stopping us from doing the rest of the alphabet. Let's live our possibilities. Thank you.